Derek, the league season is now officially over, and we have survived another year in the Premiership. What's your thoughts after the season?
I think the overriding feeling is relief. I didn't think when we sat here a year ago having a conversation around how things were going to go that we would have quite the season that we did, and whilst we didn't commit to finishing in a certain place within the league, I did talk about becoming more competitive within it. Unfortunately, it took us longer to develop that competitive edge than I'd hoped. So yeah, really sort of season of two halves really. Round one was pretty difficult for all involved, and round two just showed our resolve as a team and as a club to rally around what we needed to do and get what needed to be done at the end of the season to stay up. So yeah.
I don't think anyone in the change room shouted louder than you when the Hoyk result eventually came in, but all the emotions came out at that end of the season. But going back to the start of the season, the first couple of games, obviously getting those bonus points as well at Mar and at home to Curry. Were the glimpses that you saw of that competitiveness at the start of the season? Obviously saying it took a while to get in, but was there that kind of like glimmer?
Yeah, look, I think confidence is a fairly fragile beast, right? And I think in the build-up to the season, our confidence took a little bit of a kicking because we tried to change a lot in terms of how we wanted to play on both sides of the ball, and I think it took the players a little bit longer to grasp what we were trying to achieve. And therefore results against Watsonians and PL in pre-season kind of gave us a bit of a dent, and then I suppose being teed up to be the favourites to go down, while it's noise that sits outside the group, that noise can be quite deafening sometimes when you're trying to get boys motivated for the start of the season. So I think the way that we started against Mar, there were glimpses of that lack of confidence, but we came to life in the second half and gave a really good account of ourselves on the attacking side of the ball, and we started really well against Curry. I think we were 17-0 up within the first 20 minutes, but I think we just really struggled to hold on. I think we lost sight of the fact that we were winning, and I think when we conceded the first score, it felt like we were backs against the wall, and there was to some extent a degree of implosion around where we were. I think it finished up 55-20 or something within that game. So glimpses at the start, but then I think it kind of unravelled a little bit after that, and we picked up some injuries going into the rest of round one. Well,
yeah, going into that, of course, then some unfortunate results against the likes of Selkirk and away to Jeds, where we picked up a point but just couldn't get it, and then the 0-56 against Hawks, and the day at Golden Acre as well, when both teams were going in without a win. So did you see a lot of that kind of confidence drop in the players, or what was the feeling around the changing rooms at the time?
Yeah, look, I think there was a missing ingredient for us around how we deal with momentum swings and tense moments in games. I thought we were completely in control against Jed down there, and we didn't necessarily manage when they got their tails up in that last 20 minutes. I don't think we handled the pressure of going into Heriots having to win, and that was reflected in our performance in the first half, although again, similar to Mar, we gave a really good account in the second half. And I think going into the latter end of the season, it was managing those momentum swings and those tense moments in games is what we needed to work on the most. And you could see when we beat Selkirk down there, we got a bit of a lift. There was signs of what we were trying to achieve against Accies in that first game, and then we were back into a pressure game against Heriots, where everyone felt the entire season rode on that, and again a tense moment that we didn't handle very well. But I thought to learn from that, going into GHA, where the tail end of that game was difficult to close that out, showed real positive signs for me that what we were trying to do was starting to pay dividends, and of course we were able to close out the season in the style that we did. So
I was going to say, obviously the first win of the season against the reigning champions Mar here in what was a very low scoring game but quite a defensive showing from the entire squad, and then the win away at Selkirk as well, first ever win down there on record, yeah. And then going into GHA as well, it was very much kind of up and down, obviously with the 5-week gap we had between the win at Selkirk and Accies, but going into then that GHA game, with the mentality of it being must win.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like on going to train? Where would you say in training that we changed?
Look, when we lost to Heriots here, the mood around the camp was pretty somber. I think I was the only person in the room that still believed that we could stay up at that point. So rather than getting bogged down in the overarching sort of sentiments around being relegated, we just tried to focus on buying one more week. So the build up to the GHA game was really around taking the pressure off the players, just focusing on having a crack against GHA through there, and our mentality was really around being willing to lose in order to win. And to some extent that just allowed us to take the shackles off a wee bit, and that was reflected in how we attacked within the game. And look, there was a decision by me at one point when we were, I think it was 24 points up, to make 3 changes, and that caused a bit of a momentum swing within the game. Would I have done things differently? Probably not, because we needed to make sure that everybody was still fresh towards the back end of the season. But I thought there was 2 instances within that game that really, I think, cemented and solidified our place in the Premiership, and that was Sandy Watt's last-ditch tackle in the last play of the game when GHA thought they'd have a crack rather than kicking at the posts, and Jack Haynes coming up with a steal in the lineup as well a couple of plays before that. Those 2 moments on the back end of the game really saved the season for us.
And then going, of course, a huge win here against Jed Forest,
yeah.
And then going into the final weekend against Glasgow Hawks, knowing that obviously what would have happened elsewhere might have changed result a bit, but the defensive showing against Glasgow Hawks as well, when they were pushing us quite a lot in our 22, to then put them to nothing in the second half as well, really showed a lot of character there.
Yeah, and look, it's not dissimilar to the defensive display against Mar, and again glimpses of it in the second half, and certainly middle 30 against Selkirk. Back to what I originally said around some of the changes that we were trying to make, one of the biggest areas that we needed to improve was the defensive side of the ball this year. So in that first round of games we conceded an average 44 points a game. We brought that down to in around 20 in the second round. And that's a testament to the boys just really buying into what we were trying to achieve, certainly in the second half of the season. And geez, the defensive display against Hawks after they conceded that first try was one of the best defensive performances I've seen of a team in my 10 years of coaching senior rugby. It was phenomenal.
Bringing in quite a lot of boys as well during the middle of the season. Jamie Campbell coming in as well, and Michael Badenhorst as well, really changed the dynamics of the squad as well.
Yeah, look, they were pretty shrewd acquisitions by the club. Luckily, we had Michael in the draft through Super 6. I'd worked with Michael previously at Aki, so I definitely knew what he was going to bring to the table, and how he was going to develop boys around him. Jamie Campbell added a lot of value as our academy draft player, and Paul Bogey, who decided to turn his back in Super 6 and come and give us a crack, added some real edge and some real steel in the back row. So those 3 players were great, but it's not all on those guys. I think once we sort of developed trust in ourselves as a coaching and a playing group, and boys started to believe what it was that we were trying to do on both sides of the ball, like their desire to improve and get better week on week was pretty evident in the performances as well. So it's not just on Michael, who might be credited for the great escape, but I think it was a squad effort, not just the ones but the twos as well, who contributed on training nights, and the boys had stepped up when they needed to. But equally, the coaching group became a lot closer, a lot more aligned, and a lot more cohesive over the course of the season. So, whilst we had a rocky start, I think things that needed to come together did come together in the end to produce what we needed to do in those last 6 games.
So looking ahead to next season, obviously still got the cup run against Selkirk and everything, but looking ahead to next season, what's going to be, in your view, the biggest changes to the squad or to the way that we're playing?
First and foremost, we want to be fairly ambitious around the statement of what next season means. We want to have our best ever season in the Premiership, and you only need to look at our form to see where we need to be finishing for that to happen. We have some indicators as to what we need to do on the field to make that happen. but equally we need to look at bringing in some personnel in lieu of retirements of, Neil McNairn, Craig Owenson, and potentially William Fleming. These are big characters and big players for us, and so having an awareness of where we are next season just allows us to crack on with recruitment, which we've started to do already. So yeah, that's a big focus for us, is being clear on what our goals are, what we need to do to be able to achieve that, and adding the right personnel in the right areas to make that happen.
And finally, I guess, just is there anything you'd like to say to obviously all the supporters that have been with us throughout the entire season as well?
Yeah, no, look, the hype squad throughout the back end of the season were phenomenal for us, and I don't think we would have been able to play in the way that we did against GHA, against Mar at home, Selkirk away, and Hawks away if it wasn't for the very overzealous support that we had from the supers and some of the stalwarts that we've got around the club. And look, we really appreciate and know what the outcome of the season meant, not just for the players in the squad, but for the broader community that sits within and out with this club, including individuals who were sending us messages from Australia the night before the game. So look, we feel a burden and responsibility to do it for them as much as the boys within the changing room as well.
Derek, thank you very much for joining me.
Hi.